I'd like to welcome my special guest to the Purpose Tree this week, author Ann Calandro. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast series.
It's great to finally catch up with you, Ann, and talk about the new book release. I have it here, Lost in Words, and it's a great collection of short stories. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but let's go back to your early years. What were you like as a child? Did you read? Did you write? Where did this all start? Did you see some of the origins of being a writer at that young
Um,
age?
actually, I was more an artist. I was always drawing, and I wanted to grow up and get into art school and be an artist. But I was also a reader. I read constantly. I was always at the library. But I didn't. No, I didn't at that young age. I didn't really connect reading with writing. It was just something I did. I read, but I didn't try to write. And so I didn't get into art school. I had wanted to go to Cooper Union, and I didn't really have a plan B. And so I thought, well, I like to read. I'll become an English major and I'll become a professor of literature. And so I got a BA in English, and then I went on for a master's. And sometime during the master's program, I realized that I definitely did not want to be a professor of English. And I thought, well, I've already spent a year here. I have to do something different. So I petitioned to do I went to Washington University in St. Louis for graduate school. And at that point, they didn't have an MFA program, but they had a creative thesis option. You could either write a novel or parts of a novel, write a collection of short stories, or write a collection of poetry. So I picked poetry because I figured it would be easier to switch gears and um, write 50 pages of poetry than to suddenly come up with a novel when I had never written anything but class papers. And so that's what I did. And I liked writing. And then all the other graduate students were busy submitting work to the New Yorker, which was everybody's goal. And I had read the New Yorker, but I had never thought of submitting to it. And so I wrote a short story, which is in the collection. It's Effects of Stress. And I sent it off on a lark, and I got an encouraging response. So something clicked. I said, wow, I can do this. And that's when I really started writing. So I was already in my late 20s, or early 30s or something by then. That was a long answer to your question.
And is that one of the oldest stories in this book?
That is the oldest
The
story.
oldest, okay.
That's the first story I ever wrote. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing to that's one of my questions. What's the oldest piece in here and what's the newest?
The oldest piece is Effects of Stress. The newest, um, Salvation Salvage is probably the newest.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that was got 3 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, I'm working on other things, but they're not done, or they're nonfiction, and so they're not in this collection.
Sure. These are all entirely fiction, and it's a good number of stories too. There's a lot in here. Some are short, some are longer, so it's also pretty diverse in terms of what you're doing. Um,
The short ones, they're mostly fairly recent. And I wrote, some of them are pandemic related. So I wrote them during the pandemic, when everybody was home and had to find
yeah.
things to do. The longer ones go back further, except for a few that the piano trio is also fairly new. Um, that and Salvage are probably the newest ones.
And so you've been sending some of these stories out have been published. You've been sending out your stories for many years, publishing individual stories and poems as well, right? You're also a poet.
Yes, and creative nonfiction. I sent out, after that first encouraging rejection letter from the New Yorker, I sent about six more to the New Yorker, and none of them got accepted. And
Oh,
so I kind of refocused on where to send them. And then for a while, I went back to art. So I wasn't writing. And then again in about 2017, I started also writing more and sending out more. I discovered Submittable and started using that platform. And that's when most of them have been published after 2017 in various journals. Yeah.
Great, great. So, and have you, I know you have another poetry collection, which will probably be published soon,
I don't
right?
know. It's out. It's being considered. It's out. I submitted it to a couple of places, but it's all still pending. And I have a non-fiction, creative nonfiction collection, sort of in the works, or maybe out at a couple of places, or I'm waiting to submit it to a couple of places. So, and after that, I'll have to start writing again.
Fresh. Oh, right.
Yes, I'll need more stuff. Yeah.
That's tough to do that. So, well, what tell me a little bit about the art because this is your artwork on the front cover here that
Yeah.
um tell us about this particular piece.
That particular piece is called Requiem and 18 Notes, and that the mailbox in it was actually the mailbox on the corner of the block I grew up on. So I grew up in New York City back in the days before New York City was gentrified, and graffiti was everywhere. And I kind of like graffiti. So I always liked that mailbox, and I, took many photos of it, and I used it I use it in various collages, but that particular collage, my mother always used to write me a lot of letters and send me newspaper clippings, and so that is an old photo of her across the river, um, mailing me many envelopes with many
Oh, okay.
newspaper clippings. I She died in 2015, and so I did the collage shortly after that, just kind of as a good memory of the letters and the clippings, which nobody was sending me anymore. So, but how I got into art was so after I graduated from graduate school, I became an editor and at publishing a publishing house, medical editing, and I really liked that. I really liked editing, and then publishing houses kind of vanished or changed, and I went into medical communications and that kind of changed too. And then I went into advertising, pharmaceutical advertising. And I don't know if you've watched the DVD Netflix series Mad Men, but it still is kind of like that, except
Is it?
without the 3 hour martini lunches. But it's a crazy environment. And so I was looking for a nonverbal activity to kind of calm down after days in the office. So I'd come home in the evening and I'd say, nobody, no, don't talk to me. Nobody can talk to me. Everybody be quiet. And I just started doing artwork again. And I stumbled on collage. And the weird thing was that, I have a master's degree in English, and it was still hard to get things published. And I don't have a degree in art. And suddenly people would say, wow, I really like your stuff. Can you exhibit it? Can I buy it? And are you the artist? And I'd look over my shoulder and I'd say, yeah, yes, I guess I am.
Yes,
I guess
sure.
I am the artist. So the whole thing doesn't seem real. But I started off with bookmarks and greeting cards and sold them at craft shows. And then
Wow.
I expanded to small, small sizes of wall art. And then they became bigger, and the biggest was 24 by 36 inches. But to frame those and transport those and maybe mail them in to be considered for a show, it's too much trouble. So I downsized to 18 by 24 as the biggest size I work on. So that's what the cover was. It's an 18 by 24 collage. One of I think I've in the 20 years I've been doing collage, I think I've probably done 100
Wow,
collages.
really?
Yeah, and it's fun because I don't know. I guess I'm what you call an outsider artist. I'm not, I'm really not following any rules of
Yeah.
perspective or anything like that. It's just kind of magical realism. So it's fun.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean it's a stunning cover, so I mean
Thank
it's
you. Yeah, I know
really,
that.
really nicely.
Well, the designer also did a great job with it. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah. Um yeah, nice salute to Jacob Arms, who does our
Yes.
designs for. He's amazing with the work that he does. So
Yes, I couldn't make a decision because the three cover options were all great. So I
yeah, yeah.
emailed you several times. This one, this one, this
I
one.
know, I know. There are a lot of ways you could have went with this, you know. So sometimes they'll take artwork and just frame it in a box on the cover, and then
Hmm.
but this was something that was like, well, let's you could also wrap it all the way around, but then that sometimes gets hard with the back covers and the spine. So this just managed to be yeah, I think
Yeah,
the best choice.
I'm really happy with how it. Yeah,
Good, good. I'm glad.
thumbs up to Serving House Press and the designer. It looks good.
Nice. How do you decide what art you do that day? How do you decide am I going to write a story? Am I going to write a poem? Is this just something that happens to you on the go, on the fly, spontaneously? Like I feel like painting today, or I feel like writing a poem, or I feel like writing a story or an essay, or
Usually I'll get an idea. I mean, maybe it'll be just a sentence I've overheard just something. And I'll write it down. I'm always walking around with like lists and pencils and paper, and I'll write it down, and then I'll just think, would that be better as a poem or writing or a collage? And sometimes I try using that in a poem and it doesn't work, and I put it aside. Oh, maybe I'll write a story with that idea. And sometimes I think it'll be good as a collage, and that doesn't work. So I don't know, maybe one out of three times it's an immediate match, but more often than not it isn't. But usually the collages are more, I guess, fun, I would say, and happier. I mean, they're colorful, and yeah, they're more Marc Chagall, childlike looking, and they're just more fun. The poems and the stories are generally there is some humor in some of the stories, but they're more serious, I think, or the topics are more serious.
is it a different feeling that you get when you feel like painting? Is that more
Um,
of a visual image that you have?
sometimes it is, yeah, but sometimes it's just a like some of the collages I've done, the title is actually from a song, or it's a line in a song. Like I like gospel music, and there's a song by Mavis Staples, and I think one of the lines in it is always howdy howdy and never goodbye. And so I thought, oh, that would be an interesting title for a collage. What could it be about? And I thought about that, and then I did end up um, creating a collage with that title. And basically, it's just a scene of my old neighborhood when I was a kid, just with a bunch of people sitting around doing city things, and just an odd perspective, a tilted blocks and buildings. And that's what I titled it.
Nice. Is your artwork for sale on the website?
Um, no, that I used to have a website, and it was for sale. And then whoever hosted it was Vista Print, whoever hosted the website. Anyway, long story short, I don't have my own website. That's a sub website on Fine Art America, where any artist can show 25 images. So prints and other things are available from the images, but not the originals. But sometimes I do real gallery shows, and yes, they're for sale then. But I don't do as many as I used to, because I don't think there are as many brick and mortar gallery shows as there used to be. Now things are more virtual.
In terms of the stories in here, is there one that you would say is the closest to you?
Um, Probably Rondo, because I actually did play the cello as a child,
Oh,
although I wanted to play the piano. And I did, as a seventh grader, I think, just ditch the lessons teach myself clarinet and start taking piano lessons. So that one is probably the closest. Yeah.
Is there one that's the furthest away? Something that's just really outside of the realm of
Um,
your reality?
yeah, the piano trio is one of several that's outside my reality. That I don't want to, I won't give, it's actually based on the lives of three musicians from the 1800s. I won't say which ones in case anybody wants to read it and try to guess. But no, I didn't go to music conservatory. I didn't grow up in the Midwest. I did not compose a concerto, a piano concerto. So yeah, that one is total fiction, except that I admire those three musicians and was always intrigued by their lives and thought, well, right, why not write a modern day retelling of their lives and just give it an ending?
You know enough about their lives just from research, reading about them.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a
Uh,
couple of biographies about all three of the musicians. Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So I just took it. I just read the biographies because I wanted to, not because I thought I'd write. I didn't originally think I'd write a story about them, just because I take piano lessons and that those are some of my favorite composers. So I like playing their music. But then I thought, why not write a story about this? So it was probably the one that was the most fun to write. So
Nice. It does say in your bio you're a classical piano student.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you're a student. How long have you
Um,
been a student of?
well, I took piano lessons a couple of years as a teenager, and then a couple of years about 20 years ago. And then about 10 years ago, I said, I want to, take them again. I want to get more serious about it. I want to find a really, a teacher who's going to be as hard on me as he is on people who are training for conservatory. So I did find a teacher like that, and I started seriously. So 10 years, and I love it. I don't like being away from the piano. So when I'm on vacation, I try to find a place to practice, which doesn't always work out. But if I could have chosen to be anything, probably I would have chosen to have enough talent to be a classical musician, just not a classical music student. But I'm just a student.
You
And
must be able to play some really great stuff by now, though.
yeah, I am. I mean, I'm right now. I'm working on a Debussy piece, one of the first of the two arabesques, and a bunch of Chopin pieces, Prelude, Nocturne, and something else that escapes my memory at the a Brahms piece. So yeah, and I love. I mean, I think I do say that in one of my stories, or no, maybe not. Maybe it's one I haven't published yet. But that I'm actually playing these pieces. It's still a source of amazement to me, kind of like the artwork.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a surprise talent that
A surprise. Yeah,
that's amazing. I love piano. I love listening. I wish I could play real
you
piano.
no, you probably can play. You just have to take lessons, and also
Yeah.
you have a full-time job, or at least three full-time jobs. So
Yeah, yeah, it's quite
you know
busy. Is it you practice every day?
you need. Yeah, I practice every day because I mean I want to, not it doesn't seem any point to me to take the lessons and not practice. So yeah, I mean somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour
Wow.
most days,
Okay.
six to 7 days a week. It's not like doing the artwork or writing. If I don't do those for a while, it's not like I can't. But if you miss too much piano practice time, any musical instrument, I would think,
Yeah, I think, yeah, you get rusty.
yeah,
Yeah.
you lose ground. So
Yeah.
that's why I practice.
Nice, nice. Tell us about the title story, Lost in Words. What is
Um,
that?
well, some of the stories are somewhat based a little bit on So uh, my husband actually did put us down as Baron de Rothschild at a restaurant once, and when the hostess called Baron Party of Four, I said, why? And he just likes to make up stories, but he's not an MFA in English, and most of the rest of it is not true. I just took it from there. I just thought that's kind of funny that we were called Baron because the waitress couldn't say or didn't want to say Baron de Rothschild. And I just imagined most of the rest from there. The parts in there about the ad agency are true. That's what I did make up a cheat sheet to tell certain graphic designers not to hyphenate the word the. And I did have a good friend at the agency, and we would kind of commiserate over certain ad agency processes and people. But yeah, I think, I mean, I in that story, I sort of tried for humor and a lighter touch, maybe than some of the other stories, which are, quite frankly, I think not depressing per se, but more serious.
Sure. Well, it's a nice way then to begin the book and
Yeah,
right there at the top. So start off on a gentler note.
yeah, that's what I thought. And also, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I probably do have a tendency to get lost in words because I still do read a lot. And then I'm thinking about what I'm reading. And, meanwhile, other things are going on. And I'm lost in words just thinking about a book or a character or a story idea.
Not is it the difficulty in finding the words to express what you're feeling?
Definitely. It's definite.
Part of
Yes,
that.
it's definite. And I find poetry harder than fiction, and I find fiction harder than creative nonfiction. It's definitely hard, and I have such admiration for writers who can do that. I recently read there's an author named Peter Heller who has both a poetry and a fiction writing degree from U Iowa, and his most recent book is called Burn. And it's set in the outdoors. It's two guys who meet up to go hunting or something, and it's not really the type of story I would generally be interested in reading. But just the way he gets their feelings into words, it just took my breath away. I mean, to
Wow.
be able to do that consistently, book after book and multiple times in a book. I mean, if I can get one sentence in a story that I think does that, I'm happy for weeks. And for an example, the last line of Rondo, I thought that I did it there. I mean, and the last line of Effects of Stress. Sometimes I feel like one sentence, meets my standard of getting the feeling into words, but it doesn't happen as often as I would like.
If you had to tell somebody what this whole book was about, this whole collection, how would you sum it up? What's the theme here that you want people to come away with?
Hmm. I mean, I guess many of the stories I think are just sort of about the concept of a parallel life, where you're in one life and you think, but how did I end up here? Wasn't I supposed to be in another life? So it's just kind of how do you get from point A to point B? I mean, you've got yourself to make move, and then you've got people in your life, and then you have external circumstances, sort of like the best laid plans. Something kind of always happens to make the road a different road. Like people used to say, the only constant is change. So I don't know. I guess that I think is one thing that ties many of the stories together. The theme of, wait, how did I end up here? What life am I in after all, or what happened? But as for I just hope that for anybody who reads it, just, I don't know, they just have an aha moment about something. They, not that that necessarily is what they take away from it, but just kind of, oh, I had an experience like that. I had a friend like that. I had a job like that. I had a thought like that. Wow, who are these three musicians? I'm interested, in them. Now I'm going to go read about them too. So whatever, if somebody likes a story, then that's that's enough for me.
Nice, yeah. Any writer I think would be happy with with that. This is not your first book though. You have some other books out there. Tell us about those.
I had a poetry manuscript accepted, and mostly it was based on most of the poems were from my thesis, my graduate school thesis. But the publisher, this was right before COVID. I mean, like a month or two before, and the publisher went out of business a
Oh,
couple of months after. So the book doesn't exist anymore, except for the couple of copies that I have, because the publisher
they did print it though.
they did print it. I mean, there might be a copy floating around on
Wow. Okay.
Amazon somewhere. So that was disappointing. But
Okay.
since then, I've written some more poems, and got it into a different collection with a different title and sort
Okay.
of. But I do like writing fiction and nonfiction. I just find, I mean, I find poetry harder to write. You have to,
Hard. Okay.
yeah, you have to distill, even because it's generally shorter, and shorter things are harder to write. You don't have as many words to say what you're trying to say, or at least it's harder for me.
Yeah, you get the style and technique and all of that that goes into the form of the poems and
Hmm.
yeah, how do
And
you it's very different, I think. You're cutting down to an emotion or an observation of something where
hmm
storytelling in a story. I mean, there's narrative poetry, um but even in narrative poetry, it's not you don't have the I guess in that's where it's really difficult. You don't have the space to tell.
Right, right. It has to be more compressed. I read somewhere, that novels are like worlds. I could never write a novel. They're just you
No.
have to remember too many things, and they're too. I just couldn't do it. But short stories and poems are more about putting feelings into language, expressing inexpressible things in language, and difficult as that is, I find it. I've never tried to write a novel. I don't think I ever could or would. But it's hard enough trying to write poetry and fiction.
It's not in the plan
No,
then.
but novel, no way. Never going to happen.
How about a novella? Same. Is it just
Two, I think. I mean, I'm not sure how. I think the longest short stories are in my book are maybe 4,000 words, and I don't think I could go much longer than that. So probably not a novella either.
yeah, yeah. Novella's almost there to the novel. I
I couldn't
think
do
it's
it.
like a short novel, so
Yeah, no, I'll just have the longer short stories,
yeah,
maybe.
longer ones, yeah. So
Yeah.
also in terms of your other writing, you've written some children's material?
Yeah, that was something I always wanted to do, even as a kid. I wanted to write a children's book. And finally, I think it was, yeah, 2014 or 15, I finally came up with an idea, and I tried to find an agent or pub, and I couldn't. And then finally, Shanti Arts Press is a small press up in Maine, and I had submitted just some individual artwork, because they also had a journal back then. I think it was called Stone River or Stone River Voices, something like that. And then I realized they published children's books, and so I asked, and the publisher said, "Oh, sure, we'll publish your children's book." And I was like, "Really?" So then I actually had to create all the illustrations for the book, and it was challenging.
That was up to you. Was that by choice or
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I wanted to do the illustrations and write the book, and it was hard. I mean, it was a learning process, but it did get published, and I subsequently wrote two more books for the same publisher, and then my husband decided he wanted to write a book, and
oh,
I illustrate a children's book, and I illustrated that for him, and so that got published. But I think we made about 27 cents in royalties. So, which we knew, and which the publisher knew. She was totally cool about it. She said, this is a labor, having this press was a labor of love, basically. And she didn't, she We tried marketing. She tried more. The children's books just didn't really, sell. And so, I have my few copies, and I'm just glad I did it. I always wanted to write a children's book because I think it's one of the hardest things in the world to do. Some of the best children's books, because it's like a poem. They have to be pared down. Like think of,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats or something like that, or Goodnight Moon. They're just, mine are not like that, but it was fun to do, and I did it.
That's great. Hey, that's the accomplishment, right? The
Yeah, yeah.
that's wonderful. Well, this is a really impressive short story collection, and I think people should check it out soon. And I'm sure
Thank
it's
you.
good.
No, thank you so much, because before I sent it to Serving House Press, I was just thinking to myself, I wish I had enough stories to try to get a short story collection published. And then I thought, maybe I do. Maybe I should look through all my computer files and see and then when I saw that I did, I said, oh, okay, I think I can send it in. And then to get an email saying, congratulations, your collection is, it was like, wow, I think I completely levitated off the floor for several weeks. And I just couldn't, it was like, really, really, I was very, very happy. I am very happy.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a great moment, right? Getting that acceptance email. And then
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah.
what was it like getting the copy in the mail? Was that nervous? Were you nervous? Like, oh no. I mean, you'd already seen like proofs, but you still don't know what it's going to look and feel like in person.
I No, I wasn't nervous. My only concern is just because I'm pretty nearsighted and wear glasses. So I was hoping the font would be something that if I could read it, anybody could read it. And when I opened it up and I saw that you had used that beautiful font, Georgia, it's kind of retro, and the paper is not blinding optical white. It's got a nice off white cast, and they look like the vintage paperback books of old. I was like, yes, but I, I
Yeah.
already I already knew from looking at the proof that it would look. Those were the only two things I was wondering about. And no, when I saw it, I was extremely happy. It looks
Oh, that's
great.
great. Great
It
to hear
looks
that.
great. So no, thank you. It looks great.
Well, I thank you very much for coming on today, spending the time with me to talk about the collection. I know we're going to see more of you.
Thank you. I hope so. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for publishing the book, doing such a beautiful job with it, and having me on the podcast. It's a new experience for me.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope everybody checks this book out, Short Stories, Lost in Words by Ann Calandro. Thanks so much, Ann, for joining us today.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.